Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing how to make this fun, spring-themed, critter-filled slimline card using some of Lawn Fawn's newest supplies from their spring 2021 release. So you have a lot of bubbles, which are a big focus of their latest release, and I've put a whole bunch of critters blowing bubbles in a happy scene. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. I've gone ahead and die cut some pieces off camera. I used a slimline die to create 3 rectangles. One of them I cut out of light blue paper that you see me blending here with some white pigment ink on through a cloud stencil. And I'm just blending that white pigment ink on little by little. And as you can see, the stencil doesn't go the whole length of the slimline card. It's made for a normal A2 size card. So whenever I get to the end, I just kind of move the stencil over and continue, and it ends up being fairly seamless. In addition to that, I also cut out a rectangle piece and then used the picket fence border die to create that picket fence you see in the top left corner. Again, that's just made for a standard sized A2 card, so it's a little bit too small, so I just cut out 2 pieces, and I'll layer them together to fill out the full length of the slimline card. And the last piece I cut out was another slimline rectangle, but then I used a grassy border die to cut out that grassy border shape. And again, because that grassy border die was small, I just used it 2 times in a row to cut out the full length of the slimline card. So once I was done blending on those clouds, I'm blending on some green Distress Oxide ink. I'm using Cracked Pistachio onto this grassy border piece. And I'm just blending from the top, so where the grassy edge is, down to the bottom. And I'm leaving a little bit of a white space, so it kind of looks like the green just fades out into nothing, which I think is a really nice look and kind of just creates like a pale, pastel-y kind of effect. So I'm really just focusing all of the ink at the top and then just blending it down little by little with my blending brush. And I can hold on to the piece with that white part at the bottom, which is nice. I'm doing a little bit of splatter on these pieces, so I took some brown watercolor because I thought that would look like kind of pieces of ground, and I just splattered that onto the grassy piece with a paintbrush. So I put those pieces aside to dry, and now it's time to go ahead with the stamping. For this card, I'm using a lot of different Lawn Fawn stamp sets because I took a little critter or 2 from so many different ones, so that there's a large variety of critters on the final card. So I'm starting by stamping out a whole bunch of images from Bubbles of Joy and Scripty Bubble Sentiments, which is 2 of Lawn Fawn's newest bubble-themed stamp sets. And I'm stamping all of these images out in Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, which is a really nice black ink for Copic coloring. I'm just using my mini Misty tool to do this so that I can stamp everything twice to make sure that I get a really nice, crisp black image. I filled up the whole panel with those mice and bubbles, and I moved on to a second panel to stamp out some more critters from a variety of stamp sets, as well as some accessory scenery pieces like grass and trees and things like that. And by the way, I do list all of the supplies that I use on every card that I make down in the video description below this video on YouTube. So if you just scroll down and open that description box, you'll see a list of all the supplies. So if you want to see the names of the exact stamp sets where everything comes from in this card, you'll see it there. And of course, you can always ask me questions down in the comments. If you have any questions about anything or anything I used, I'm happy to answer those. Okay, so I'm going ahead with the Copic coloring, and for the video today, there are a lot of images to color. It took me a while to color them, so it's good that I find this fun and therapeutic. But I am just going to show the coloring for these mice on this video, and as well as the bubbles, because those are sort of the new elements that came in some of the latest stamp sets. If you do want to see more of my coloring and see me coloring in some different critters and sort of different types of things, definitely check out some of my other videos. I have Copic coloring in almost all of my YouTube videos for card making because I just use these markers so much. I think I use them on almost every single card I make. They're definitely my favorite coloring medium. If I want to challenge myself, I do go outside my comfort zone a little bit and try something like pencil crayons or watercolor, but that happens more infrequently than I would like. I definitely stick to what I know and what I like the most, so I use these Copic markers quite a lot, and I do have a lot of other coloring examples and tips on other videos on my channel. So as I've been talking, I've gone ahead and colored in all of these mice gray. Just use the same gray for all of them because there's a lot going on this card. So in the past, in other cards, I sometimes have colored in mice different colors, so I'll color one cool gray, one warm gray, one brown, one black. But for this one, I just kept them all the same because I knew there was going to be so many other critters of so many other colors, there was going to be enough going on. Okay, so once I have all those mice colored in, I'm moving on to the bubbles. You can see I've already colored one, but I'm not showing that because I ended up not using it. I didn't really like how I colored it. And this is something that's good to do if you have this stamp set. You can just stamp out like 10 different bubbles and try different coloring techniques. So like every time you make a card with them, try a different coloring technique and you can kind of see what you like best. So after I made that one I didn't like, I decided to go ahead and use a different technique, which was to just use a light pink and a light blue marker and just lightly outline the inner edge of every bubble. So I'm just putting this thin line of blue and pink kind of halfway around for each one and just overlapping them a little bit, just so you can get a little bit of a blend between the colors. I believe the colors I'm using here for Copic markers are RV000 and B000, so just very light, pale pink and blue. And I did the same for the word smile, where I just went over half of it with pink, half of it with blue, just sticking to that outline. So off camera, I've gone ahead and colored in the rest of the images and then cut them all out. I also laid them out in the scene to kind of get an idea where I wanted things to go. And when I did that, I could also figure out where I wanted the other part of the sentiment to be. Because I had stamped out the word smile from the Scripty Bubble Sentiment stamp set, I knew that I wanted the You Make Me to be stamped directly onto the background of the card. So I just needed to figure out where it was going to go. So I kind of aligned everything, and then I stamped that out using a stamp positioner so that I could stamp it twice and get that really, really nice crisp black line. I'm splattering some liquid stardust onto the background as well, and that just gives a really nice clear shimmer. Now for all of these bubbles and bubble accessories, I'm coating them with a layer of Wink of Stella glitter pen, which gives a really nice sparkle. And then I'm coming in with some glossy accents to give a layer of sort of 3D shine and kind of smoothness, which is a really nice effect. It kind of makes them actually look like wet bubbles. So I'm putting the glossy accents on all of these little bubbles coming out of the bubble holders, or bubble wands, I guess, and then also on the bubbles themselves. So I'm just going through one by one. Now I stamped out a whole bunch of bubble wands because I wanted all the critters to have them basically, but I don't end up using them all, so it's fine. Whenever I stamp out too many of something, I usually just keep it on hand and then I can always use it on another card. Okay, so now it's time to assemble the card. So I'm starting with the background piece and I'm just gluing that picket fence right onto it using some liquid glue. And like I mentioned, I had to cut that out in two parts because the die is only sized for a standard sized A2 card. So I cut it out twice and I just overlapped them so that you can barely even tell that it's two pieces instead of one. I'm doing the same thing for the grass, so just using some liquid glue, and I made sure to keep the glue away from the very edge where the grassy edge is, because I wanted the ability to kind of tuck some images in behind the grass. So you can do this too if you are gluing something down that you want to tuck things behind. Just kind of avoid gluing the edge and it should leave you some wiggle room to tuck things in. I took a piece of the new plaid paper from their Lawn Fawn's newly released Perfectly Plaid Remix Pack, which is really beautiful plaids in spring colors, and I cut that down to a standard size slimline card size, so 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches, and I glued that down onto a card base. And then I glued my panel straight onto that, so everything is just glued together with liquid glue. Okay, so now I took all of my images and put them back on the card where I want them to be, and once I've done this, I can just go through one by one and stick everything down. So for some of the images, I'm popping them up onto foam squares because I want them to be a little bit elevated and stand out a little bit. I tended to do this for most of the critters, so I like the critters to be elevated and stand out. And then I kind of glued down sort of the background images directly onto the card using liquid glue. So the bubbles and some of those flowers and leaves and pieces of grass and things, I just glued straight down. So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, so I'm not showing you how I'm gluing down every single image, but you can see that I'm continuing along, moving from right to left, and just sort of picking each one up and gluing it down one by one. Now when I'm doing intricate scenes like this, I do like to use my craft tweezers because I find that it lets you sort of place things in the exact spot you want without your fingers getting in the way. So it lets you really see what something's going to look like before you place it down. So I pretty much always use my craft tweezers for this type of work, and they are really handy. So I definitely recommend you trying some craft tweezers out if you haven't yet. So again, I'm just kind of sticking things down one by one, a little bit of liquid glue, a little bit of foam. I love that little bird holding the bubble one. I think that's so cute. And then once I had all the main things down, so all the critters and all the bubbles, I continued on, as I usually do. I don't know when to stop. So I started to add more little pieces of grass in the front there. And then I'm going to add little leaves along the bottom as well, because I colored in these leaves with sort of matching colors to the plaid, just those spring pastel colors, like a light pink, light green, light orange, light purple. So I really wanted to include them on the card. So I just kind of laid them out along the bottom, and I'm just gluing them each down one by one with some liquid glue. And that will finish off sort of the main images that I'm putting on this card. So once all the leaves are down, the card will basically be done. So this is the final card. This is how it came out. I really love sort of the all the mixture of different critters, and they're all kind of playing together with these bubbles. I think that's so adorable. And I really tried to keep it very spring themed with the colors, so that was a fun challenge too, to kind of keep the color palette very spring themed. I think it came out really cute. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you do want to see more of my cards, head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the video description box below, or check out some of my other videos on my channel. I hope that you enjoyed watching, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!